I listen to music using Spotify.
I listen to music driving in the car, but mainly on iTunes, and I purchase all the digital albums off there.
So do you listen to vinyl?
No.
It's not my thing. I just never listened to vinyl.
I know the cliche answer to this is it sounds good, it sounds better than MP3 and all this, but like I personally like can't hear the difference. But I just think like having a vinyl, it's like you have something to hold, you have something to look at.
The vinyl was introduced to the market in 1948. Following this, the cassette was introduced in 1965. The first audio CD was created in 1982, and finally the MP3 file entered the market in 1994. Vinyl sales grew by 250% between 2002 and 2014. In the last decade, the global digital music revenue has increased by over 1,000%.
When I'm home, I like to listen to vinyls because it takes me back to the era, the golden era of music creation.
I used to just listen to CDs, had a lot of CDs, and obviously MP3. About 2 or 3 years ago I got into vinyl. I think some music, especially like older music, sounds better on it. It's not kind of in a snobby way, because I think people can be quite snobby records, oh it always sounds so much better. It doesn't sound better, it just sounds different. It's got more of a warmth to it. Now I prefer shopping for records than anything else. Yeah. You've got a stronger connection with vinyl, I think.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to do when you get a new bit of vinyl. You either need a good fingernail, or you do that on your trousers, otherwise you can cut yourself. And this is a tune from, I think, 2008 with Pete Simpson, called This Way. Hope that's the right speed. It wasn't something I thought, oh, I'm going to collect records. I think as a kid you get into stuff, and I think you have the time to go, right, well I'm just going to play with Lego for a week, or I'm going to, I'm just going to spend all my time riding a bicycle and repairing it. You get into one thing, and I was into BMXing and I was into music. And then someone stole my BMX, so I was just into music then. The collecting thing started, I think, I'm not sure, I just used to spend all my money on records. My uncle used to take me to Longsight Market when I was a kid. They were 25p each, so you could go and buy, maybe 8 records for £2. There is a joy in looking for vinyl. The same way there is for, if you're into antiques, or you like going to charity shops or markets and looking through a load of stuff to find something special that you're not going to pay a lot of money for. But then you had the kind of weird and wonderful journey that this one little record took out of the maybe 50,000 that were pressed. How did that get there? That might have been to Norway, and then to Sweden, and then to Germany, and then to Japan, and then it ends up in Manchester. So it's kind of this little journey that each of these records has taken, some a more direct journey than others. That's a really fascinating thing as well. And a lot of the records, I remember the shops where I bought them from, or the people who recommended them to me. And that kind of brings back, other memories as well. So it's kind of, there's a lot of layers to record collecting, and a lot of it's just about kind of remembering when you first heard that record. Which I think is quite an important thing, because you always remember the first time you hear something and when you get really excited about it. And a lot of it's about, this is amazing and I don't have this record. but then that whole journey you go on trying to find it. Being able to go into a place and hang out and learn about stuff and get excited, and then the person next to you start talking to, and oh wow, I've not seen you for ages, and have you heard this? No, what's that? You know, it just becomes a very sociable pursuit as well. I appreciate also that there's been many formats over the years, and you know, vinyl's just one of them. It's just in its varying states. It's been around for probably 120 years now. There's a lot of different things about it, but then it has a nice sense of ritual about it as well. You know, just the whole kind of, this record's 40 or 50 years old. I feel this is almost like a direct connection to the artist and the time that they recorded it. This is a physical artifact. The ritual thing is sitting down, you know, with an album, taking it out of the sleeve, you know, giving it a good smell. You might smell of second-hand record shop. You give it a, you give it a clean. Put it on the turntable, put the needle on, you know, the nice sound of the needle as it hits the vinyl. Sit down and enjoy it. There's a lot of people who have that attention to detail with certain aspects of their lives. And I think if you're that kind of person and you like music, then vinyl will, I think, will really pull you in.
I opened up sort of the peak of the CD boom, so you know, hence the name VinylRevival. You know, I was brought with vinyl. You know, I wanted to try and keep part of it going. To survive, I think you've got to do a bit of everything these days. I don't think you can survive as just a CD shop, just as a vinyl shop. I think, you know, doing a bit of everything tends to be the reason why I survive. Over the last few years, you've noticed the young generation, you know, getting into. I mean, you know, 10 years ago, students were doing buying CDs, and you tend to notice now students these days, a lot more of them are getting into vinyl. I think bands like the Arctic Monkeys, same again. You know, grew up with older brothers, older sisters, parents who had vinyl collections. They wanted their stuff coming out on vinyl, and I think it's bands like Sociable, who all their bands that it was into always released vinyl. So I think what you're getting is bands pushing. They've always pushed to get the stuff out on vinyl as well to the record labels, and the record labels are probably cutting on to realising, well, there is a market for a limited edition so every time we do it. So.
Young people who haven't grown up with vinyl, you know, and these are the ones who haven't kind of come under its spell and maybe rediscovered it after a childhood of listening to music on their phones and that kind of thing. A lot of people don't feel that connection and almost like don't need this kind of physical medium in order to interact and enjoy the music. They don't even feel the need to own any music. Maybe think of it as a transient thing, or I can listen to this on Spotify or YouTube, and that's just as valid, you know. Like I said, the whole thing about owning music as a physical object. The whole thing about our access to information nowadays is what might have taken me 3 or 4 months to find out. Maybe in the 1980s, you might have read about something in a magazine and then you had no way of hearing it until you found it in a shop or heard it on a radio show. You can find out about it and within 30 seconds you can be listening to it. I think sometimes not being able to get something for a while increases your appreciation of it. People have no excuse nowadays for, I think, discovering amazing music, because you know that whatever there is recorded, someone will have put it out there. You know, there's a lot of music which isn't on YouTube and you can't find sound files of, but there's a hell of a lot more music on YouTube, for instance, than there is on iTunes, which is very limited. You know, the whole advertising thing is we have everything, but they don't. You know, there's half of this music has never seen iTunes. You know what I mean? And probably never will. If you look at a music video on YouTube, you'll have a whole thing, you know, a whole lot of other stuff recommending, you know, oh, I'm going to listen to that one now, and then you'll listen to that one, and there'll be another list of 10 things. Within 6 records, you could be away on a tangent that you've never imagined. but you can do the same thing in a record shop.
Record Store Day is a celebration of independent record stores in form of a one-day event with special record releases and reissues of old records that takes place in April.
And also Record Store Day should be every day, not once a year.
Vinyl lovers, like, they all come together on that specific day and, like, yeah.
Record Store Day is a funny thing. I think it gets people talking about vinyl. Definitely opened it out to a wider audience in terms of people being casually interested in it and then going, wow, I really like the White Stripes. I want that limited edition thing because I'm a fan and this is my entry into the collecting world. And you know, most people get into things like collecting records through a very mainstream thing, or just hearing something on the radio, or hearing, you know, I don't know, reading something about it, or just some little spark. And Record Day for a lot of people is that spark.
But for some, it's nostalgia, linking the direct connection with a record to a happy memory of the past, such as flicking through your parents' record collection and rediscovering it in a record shop.
Well, it's not nostalgia for me because I grew up with it. It was part of my youth, you know, and it's, you know, if you was into music, it's the only way you bought it, but you didn't just buy it for the record. I mean, to me, you can buy a record on the strength of a record sleeve, you know, that's why I was saying my first instance of my single I bought, not because I liked the track, it was on red vinyl.
Vinyl, it's strange, for me, having collected vinyl for maybe 30 years now, how I see it in the present is going to be very different from the way other people see it.
The first element is an emotional connection with that golden age of music creation. You feel happy, feel proud that you have something tangible. If you go and buy a music in iTunes, all you're doing is just giving money to Apple. There is no emotional connection between you and the artist.
I definitely prefer vinyl, but I've got to hand it to digital at the same time. Like, they do, like, vinyl is closer to my heart, but at the same time, I've got to hand it to digital.
I think people see it as something quite permanent, maybe something that holds memories for them. People like the artwork and the kind of physical aspect of it. And, you know, vinyl's seen as quite a traditional medium, but it's having music as a physical object is quite weird, you know, because it was sound until, you know, 140 years ago. I see vinyl as something that will quite happily sit alongside CDs and downloads and whatever, you know, it's all fine. And I think the whole CD versus vinyl or vinyl versus download thing is purely created by manufacturers.
They're saying it's the first time since 1996 vinyl sales are going to hit 1 million sales. You know, bands in the 80s could sell 1 million albums on their own. So, 1 million sales between so many bands. I think the last count is something like 1.5% of the market, vinyl sales, which 1.5% of any market is very, very small. But it's because it's increased year on for the last 4 years. That, you know, that's where you get the press writing about it and saying, oh, vinyl's back. It's not necessarily back. It's never gone away. It just got sort of pushed down. It sort of got demarketed, and then, you know, people have realised, well, people still want it. So it's just going back up gradually. When they created music onto record, they created the perfect format. They've never beaten it. They tried to change it, but they've never beaten it, and that's why I think people are referring back to the perfect format that they invented in the first place.